We are live. Okay, so Mike Mills with Verity Mortgage here. And this is the Texas Real Estate and Finance Podcast, number 51. A lot of these things I've been doing. You wouldn't believe that. But so today we're going to have a unique situation. We have a mother and daughter team showing up today, and we are going to chat a little bit about obviously real estate in general, kind of how they got to where they are today, what it's like working together, because that's always fun, whether you're mother and daughter, husband and wife, or whatever the case may be. There's always fun little things that come along with that. And then just in general, what the market's doing today, where we're at, what we can look forward to, all that kind of fun stuff. So without further ado, let's welcome Miss Erin and Zoe. I've got... All right. So now, Zoe, I'm going to be honest with you. When I did my little promo for this thing, I was trying to get everything all set up. I looked at your last name and I was like, there's no way. I'm not even going to try. So I'm going to try right now with you here so you can know that I intentionally know that I would screw it up. So Vanarsdel?
Oh,
is that right?
Perfect.
All right.
Oh,
Good for me. Okay.
Wow. That never happens.
The hard part is whenever I do the promos and I put them actually on, if I get it wrong, there's no taking it back. You know what I mean? It's like I just screwed it up. So I was like, I'll just say Zoe. And then when she gets here, I'll explain to her why I didn't say her last name there. So
we constantly are saying Zoe Kirsten because that's her middle name.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I appreciate both of y'all coming in and traveling over here. I know you had to come all the way from Pantego, so far. I know you came from Venus. So thanks for popping in here with me for just a little bit.
Yeah.
I really want to, y'all have a unique situation in that, you've obviously, Erin, been in the business for quite a long time. And Zoe, you're brand new to it. So there's a certain amount of, mom's been doing this for a little while, and we're going to show, or help the daughter along the way. And I can just speak from having a daughter myself that I don't know that I could do that simply because, like I told you before, I've learned in the last 5 years that I'm pretty much the stupidest person on the planet.
Right.
So I'm pretty sure if I brought my daughter into my business, it would be worse. Now, granted, when they get a little older, I think the appreciation level changes some. So let's start.
She has quit a few times.
Oh yeah, it's on a daily basis. I think
it was there for a while.
Yes. It gets a little dicey for a minute, right?
If there wasn't tears, then she was definitely quitting.
Yeah.
So, Erin, let's start with you. Mm-hmm. So, how did you get into real estate to begin with? Because I always like to get everybody's backstory a little bit, so we all know, because we all come from different backgrounds, especially in this business, because there's so many different types of people. How did you get into real estate? And then we'll get into kind of how Zoe kind of joined up with you after that.
Yes. So I was graduating from UTA and I was business marketing.
So you've been in Arlington your whole life?
No. So I grew up in Southern California.
Okay.
I moved here in 95. So I only went to high school here.
Gotcha.
And really my negotiation back then was that I would just come to high school here and I was going to go back for college.
Everybody wants to go back to California.
And and that's where all my obviously friends and family were, but it didn't take long for Texas to
get in your blood.
Yep, it was in the blood real quick.
Yes.
So went to UTA and business degree, but a lot of marketing and a lot of finance classes. My dad was finance director at Johnson & Johnson, like his entire professional career.
Okay.
And I really always admired that. Like I used to go with him on the weekends up to the office when he would work. I'd loved like the big building and like the cool big cafeteria. And
the corporate world, it was
I wanted
cool.
a corporate job.
Yes.
Like I wanted a little briefcase and he always worked. I think like so it was the Johnson & Johnson building off 360 and 20 that got torn down years ago.
Okay.
And I think that one was only like 2 stories, but I was like, man, to work in like a high rise building, like so cool.
Super cool.
So that was like really what I wanted. So graduating from UTA, interviewing for a few different jobs. And I actually applied for a listing coordinator position.
Okay.
Was being interviewed by Terry Franklin and Mandy Mahoney, her assistant at the time. And like maybe 5 minutes into the interview, she literally smacks the table and she's like, no, you are not going to be our listing coordinator. And I was like, this lady is so rude. And this was only like my second like big girl interview where I was like, am I that terrible?
Right.
So really what she was saying was, you're not going to be like my listing coordinator, but you're going to be my buyer's agent. Well, I didn't know what a listing coordinator was. I didn't know what a buyer's agent was.
You needed a job.
I needed a job.
Yes.
I had a 1.5-year-old. And so I was ready to get to work.
Right.
And so she literally said, go get your real estate license. And I registered like that next week and I went 14 days straight. It was like a 4-day class and then a 3-day Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Wow.
So I did real estate courses in 2 weeks.
Jeez.
and then just showed up like, what do I do?
Let's
What do I
go.
do?
Yes. Got it
like
done.
I'm ready to sell.
Yeah.
Which I really didn't even know that I was selling. I didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
So this was 2003. Yeah,
Well,
2003.
real estate courses prepare you for what
Nothing.
a contract looks like.
Yeah.
And they prepare you for like legal stuff that you're never going to use,
Right.
but they don't really prepare you for how to sell.
Right.
Yeah.
And a buyer's agent was such a new concept then. Terry
Right.
was one of the very first mega teams in Arlington, and she was just building it. Like I was her first buyer's agent. And so super awesome opportunity that I had no idea I was gifted with at the time.
Yep.
Because I was her first. So I literally was her little puppy dog. We met at not Corner Bakery, Cracker Barrel. She lived right there in Wimbledon.
Okay.
So I would meet her, not to eat breakfast, no, to get in her Suburban, you know, the tiniest little lady in that big old Suburban. And I would just go with her everywhere she went.
Yeah.
We would pick up clients. We would show a few homes. We would drop them back off. Back in the day when you would take clients in your car.
Right. In your car. Yeah.
And
Can you
then
imagine that now, by the way? Yeah.
No. We would go back to the office. She would handwrite the contract. We would fax it to the, customer to sign, client to sign. Sometimes they'd come in, we'd review it with them. But that's like what I did for 6 months.
The 90s.
Just follow her around. Yeah. And then when she felt like I was ready, I was past the pager.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
I got the pager.
Do you know what a pager is?
Right.
Zoe?
Do you?
Can you explain?
You really
Like for
you
real?
know.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah. So like doctors still have pagers.
Yeah.
I mean, and I felt real important with that pager, but all of her signs had the pager phone number.
Mhm.
And so any buyers, and in 2003, there was realtor.com. That was the only website to find property. And it was 2 weeks behind. So if you were really looking for property, you were still driving around, you were calling signs.
Yeah.
Well,
they still had the when they're like an MLS fax that would come like once a day or something with like,
the hot
listing.
sheet.
The
right.
hot sheet.
Yes.
Yeah.
To us.
Yes.
But not to customers.
Not to customers.
Yeah. And so they were still driving around. That was like the method of finding your next home was drive the neighborhoods you like, call the sign. And so the sign paged me, and then I would return the call. And so
you have to pull over to the payphone.
You're right.
Do you know what a payphone is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got that
I
one.
did. I did have a cell phone. It was not a smartphone.
No.
We didn't have those
No,
yet.
no.
But and so that was really for 5 years. I returned phone calls and showed and sold buyers only. So if you were one of those buyers and you had a home to sell, we had a listing specialist for you.
Gotcha.
So it was very specialized team. We had a marketing coordinator, a listing coordinator, a closing coordinator.
It's like compartmentalized.
It was, which was an awesome way to learn it because I just had to learn my part.
Right.
And with Terry's knowledge, I got really good at that. I mean, if she had a listing in Wimbledon, I had to see every home in Wimbledon. Like it was not an option.
Oh, wow. That's good.
Yeah, which no one does it. In fact, when I was explaining previewing to her a couple years ago, there was a couple of agents that were like, previewing? What is that? And I'm like,
Yeah,
what?
I had an agent. I put preview on the showing time, and she's like, "What is that?"
Yeah,
I was like,
they just don't do it anymore. But I did that because the sign was in the yard until it closed, and so I would continue to get buyers that are like, "Hey, we're really looking for a 4-bedroom." Well, have you seen the one around the corner? Because that one's actually way better than this one was. And that's how I really learned to sell.
Yeah.
So I did that for 5 years, absolutely loved it, but just kind of got to the point where I wanted a little bit more. So went out on my own. Shannon,
normal progression in real estate. Yep.
Shannon Mulroy and I kind of formed a little team for a couple of years, mainly because we were both moms. And that way, if I wasn't available, she was, vice versa. We kind of helped each other out in that. Again, awesome time for me. And then I had Braden, the market. 2007, 8, 9. Yeah. So
if you think it's bad now,
right. Live through that.
Yes.
Which
that was real estate specific related to why everything came crashing down. So
for sure. And I felt like I timed it really well because my number one thing in life is just I wanted to be a mom. And so I didn't even have to struggle with getting to decide if that was going to be
you didn't have a choice.
My option was so I got to spend the time that I wanted with Braden at home. I definitely still sold real estate, but not quite the numbers that I used to have.
Yep.
And so in that period of time also, I started a transaction coordinating business.
Okay.
Agent Muscle. I was trying to think the other day what it was called. Agent Muscle. And so Chad and Dennis and all these KW agents that were really blowing up and building those teams didn't want to do the paperwork side of things. And so I was able
salespeople
to
never want to do
paperwork.
Yeah.
And so did that for a few years, still sold. And then really kind of once Braden got into school, I kind of had gave myself permission to kind of really get full back into it. And then that's when I had transitioned to a smaller brokerage. And was there for several years. And then just recently, kind of with Zoe coming on and just life changes, started my own brokerage.
So tell me how, because, when doing, I always try to look and do a little research for these things. So I have intelligent questions to ask, but explain to me how the collective living company works, because are you a broker actually? Like, do you have your broker's license with them? Is that how that works?
Yeah. So I have actually been a broker for, I want to say like 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
So I got my license when I was at Front,
Gotcha.
broker license.
Gotcha.
And truthfully, because we got a better deal.
Yeah.
You're, you have more education, less likely to be sued.
Yes.
Like all
being a broker is not rosy. I mean, you get into a lot of trouble. There's a lot of liability.
Really, that was never on my radar at all. And so it was, Amy had really encouraged me to do that. And so I've had my broker's license for several years. And so I still do have it. However, I am still operating under just a Texas broker within side.
Gotcha. Yeah. So there's like a statewide broker that has all, but they don't really do anything. They're just holding the license essentially in the liability.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So
yeah,
I'd be curious, because you have a little bit on both sides of this. So understanding, because when agents get into the business, right, there's always money's always a thing. I mean, it always is, right? So it is, well, what's my split? How much do I get? How much do you get? And when you're new, depending on your point of view, you're okay with sharing your commissions because you don't know anything and you need help, and you need mentors, and you need people to show you the ropes, right? But then after you're in it for a little bit, then you're like, okay, well, I don't really need that anymore. I can kind of do my own thing. But I think agents don't understand the liability that comes along with being a broker. And they say, well, they just get to keep the money and they don't do anything. It's like, well, not really. Like there's actually quite a bit involved there. So from your point of view, on being a little bit on both sides of seeing that, like, how would you talk to a new agent like your daughter and tell her, like, there is importance to this brokerage side of things. And, I could do it, but I don't want to. And kind of here's why.
Right. So that's actually part of the reason that I did change years ago was when you are in such a large company, the broker isn't as accessible.
Yes.
And so that person is the one that goes down if things go down.
Yes.
And that's why I've always been like, no, thank you.
Yes.
My risk level is real low.
Right.
And so like Amy, for instance, at Front, super accessible. And that's what I absolutely loved about that, because they, there is more training involved.
Yeah.
Not E&O. What's our yearly classes we take? Not E&O. SEO. No.
Yeah.
CE.
Yeah. Continuing education.
Yes. Yeah. That there's just a lot more involved
Yes.
with the broker license. And so, like when you do have a situation where lawsuit or I'm calling my attorney is involved, you have got to be able to access your broker.
Yes.
And in companies that I've been in the past, that hasn't always been easy.
Yes.
In fact, Trek, I think, just changed their rule. I think it's 2 business days now, or 2 like calendar days.
Really?
In fact, I'm not sure if it's been like officially voted on. I think that was like one of the things that's out there now is I think it's been like 3, maybe 4. That's just way too long if someone says they're going to see you, you cannot sleep.
No.
So,
And that happens more than people realize, because I think, it gets lost in translation sometimes that when you buy a home, it's a very personal transaction. This isn't a business transaction. This isn't my company buying another company or buying an office space. This is I am relocating my family from A to B. And if anything goes sideways in that I wasn't expecting to go, people don't generally just go, oh, well, no, I understand that.
Right,
that makes
that's
sense.
fine.
Yes. No, it
that's
doesn't.
not what happens.
And unfortunately in our business, stuff happens, for lack of a better word. So,
well, and that is why I wanted to educate myself and be able to answer some of those harder questions without going to someone else. But it is important, especially as a new agent. That is like one of the top 5 questions I have them ask when they're interviewing is, who's the broker and are they accessible?
Right.
Real important.
So Zoe, how did, after seeing your mom do this for so many years and seeing the emotional roller coasters that come along with that, what was it that drew you into wanting to do this?
Honestly, just her.
Yeah.
In 2020, I moved back home from college.
Where'd you go to school?
She was forced.
Yeah.
COVID.
UNT.
Okay.
But
you were
it was
COVID
quarantined, right?
Yeah.
So I moved back in with mom, and she was just really busy at the time and needed some help with the paperwork side.
Right. Nobody likes paperwork.
Right.
Yep.
So we did that for a little bit. Working at home together and living at home together wasn't
horrible.
The best thing in the world. Too much time together.
I was like, I think you need to go back to college.
Yeah.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. So I moved out. I actually started getting my real estate license. We got a office right by her house. And then I did more of the, showing, transaction coordinating, just learning more and more.
Did you have your license at that time, or you were just
okay? I did end up getting.
Yeah, she was doing the transaction coordinating part. And then when college just abruptly stopped and we were at home with too many hours on our hands, I said, why don't you go ahead and get licensed?
While you're here, yeah.
Yeah, and I could do a lot more with the license.
Right. But it was really kind of also the paperwork person should be licensed.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they don't have to be in Texas.
Yeah.
But just from a risk reduction standpoint, like it just made sense to have her do that. And it gave her something to do.
Right.
And we all had way too much free time. And so that was really kind of the thought behind that. But then 21 hit and there was only one of me.
Yes.
And 20 different homes to show in a day. And so then she kind of started, just showing for me. And so it was like little by little.
Yeah.
Well, that's been the craziest thing about our business lately is that over the last 5 years, we've had it to where we went from a normal market, let's call it, right, in 2018, 2019, and then COVID hits and the brakes just get slammed on, right, and everything stops. I mean, everything stops. And I mean, it was a good probably 6 months, you say, something like that, where everything just completely shut down. And then once it opened it back up again, and of course, being in Texas, things opened up a little bit sooner for us than they did other places in the country. Then it just went balls to the wall. Then it was just like full go, everybody's going. And so you went from nothing to just insanely busy. And then the market shifts, rates jump up because inflation gets out of control, and then the brakes get slammed on again. So it's like, and that's where I want to hear your perspective on it, because, Erin and I've been in the business long enough. We've seen these up and downs, and you kind of know what they come. Now, I'd still say, I don't think I can't say, even in 2007 and 8, I mean, obviously there was the issues were related directly to real estate, but these stop and start to such extremes, and we've never gone through anything like this before. Yeah. Like it's completely a unique situation. So from your point of view, getting into the business, right, and being brand new to it, and I'm sure mom's at home going crazy because she's like, this is insane. Like, how did that? Yeah, like how's that worked out for you so far? Like just being in it and getting to deal with this all day long. Was it what you expected?
No, not at all.
Right.
Just because the classes and everything,
right.
I was not prepared for this. But coming in at such a hard, busy time was, I think, really good. It's frustrating to learn go, but at the end of the day,
it's trial by fire.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, like, I think I learned a lot more because of it.
Yeah. You get a lot more information a lot quicker, and you have to adapt, because if you don't, then you get left behind, and and then mom's yelling, I told you to do that. Why didn't you take care of it?
Yeah. And I wanted a lot more work, not this much work, but a lot more. Right. I'm like, go.
Right. Yeah. So what's the dynamic now with you two, as far as like how y'all are working? Are y'all working as a team, or are you working individually? I mean, I know, with the brokerage, there's you two and Christina,
right? and Lenisa.
Yeah. So, are y'all working together, or how's the dynamic working out?
Yeah. So that's kind of like ever evolving too, and kind of shifting as the market shifts. So she was doing a lot of showing last summer when and she's still showing quite a bit, but really kind of more as a partnership. So anytime we have a new buyer come in, we do a buyer consultation, and we do that together. I want them to be familiar with her, and for her also to hear like their story and what they're looking to do. So right now I tell people I am still Uber for Bergin and Bergin, although he'll be 16 like so soon. So really after 3:00, if we're during baseball season, like I'm just unavailable to show. And that's obviously prime time for people that work to look at homes. Yes. And so I set that expectation from the very beginning. Like I am fully involved in the transaction. I just might not be able to actually open the door for you on every property.
Right.
And so that's where like we'll create a group text and with the clients. And so when they find a property, it's in there, and whoever can get to them first. If we both can, we both do. But if it's in the evening, it's mostly her. And so I'm still negotiating and doing all of that. Now she has been working some of her own buyers.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, your
and
generation is the one buying houses now. They're
Yeah.
right. They're moving into that direction, except for the fact they're really expensive. But
Yeah.
yeah, she just got a really good deal for some clients on a new build.
oh, nice.
that was
Yeah.
Yes.
fun.
Well,
Yeah.
the if there are deals to be had these
Yeah,
days, that's
it's there.
where they are. So you brought up your buyer consultation. So I always want people to be able to pick up stuff from these conversations and learn things. So when you were talking to her about doing the buyer consultations, right? Walk me through a little bit like what you do with a buyer, how you what you feel like is most important in talking to them. And then if you were talking to a new agent like your daughter, what you would say, hey, look, if you're going to talk, make sure you mention this, make sure you bring up this, expectations, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I always start by telling them I have this PowerPoint presentation so that I stay on point and remember to tell you all of the points,
Because she will talk all day about it.
all day about it, and just ping, 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 ping
Yeah.
all over the place. So it's kind of formal, but like very informal.
It's just more to keep you on track.
It's 100% to keep me on track.
So you bring like your laptop, you open it up.
Yeah. So we've got a
gotcha.
TV, we project to, kind of just a not funny backstory, but when we got our new office, like when we were working at home, we actually had a few clients come in because you couldn't go to Starbucks, right? And me, and these, like at this point of my career, like most of my clients are my friends.
Right.
And so we had them in the dining room and just sat and talked about like what their goals are and how we can help them. And, here's kind of the plan.
Yeah.
And so like getting this new office, I wanted it to feel like you were in my dining room.
Right.
And so that's literally, we
kind of designed it around.
Yeah, we mimicked my dining room, and
okay.
they actually kind of look the same.
That's funny.
And so we sit down at a table, PowerPoint is up, but really the PowerPoint is every mistake that we've made, either myself or a client in buying a home. Like we don't want you to make any mistakes in this process. It's so stressful as it is. We want to take all that stress out because really it should be so fun buying a house.
Every slide is a mistake.
Every slide is a mistake.
Yes.
And so, for instance, we have had a client go on and find a home on Zillow. Zillow says the payment's $2,500. They're like, heck yes. We show them the home. We get under contract. They have spent, at this time, it was probably only like maybe $200 in option fee. They put their earnest money. Then the lender sends them their actual payment, like $3,200. So then super embarrassing for them.
Sure.
Because they're like, Erin, we can't actually afford this. I mean, they were approved for that amount, but they didn't know what that boiled down to in payment.
Right.
And so we had to terminate. In fact, I think we even went through our inspection.
Oh, wow.
Because, not all lenders are as great as Mike Mills and provide that information from the get-go. Yeah. And so it's actually something that it's on our list. We kind of make it sound like it's required, but really try to get them to get pre-qualified with a preferred lender, and all of those preferred lenders, make sure that they know what that translates to, what that monthly payment is. Yeah. The sales price doesn't even matter these days. It's like, what is the monthly?
Well, we've coached the down, or the unfortunate thing is that consumers have been coached by our industry, by lenders, and not necessarily realtors as much, but lenders for sure, is, rates. Everybody's, pay, what's the rate? I mean, I get so many phone calls every single week about, hey, we don't want to talk to you about it. We just want to know the rate. I'm like, well, there's a lot that goes into that, but either way, right? At the end of the day, it's not the rate, it's the payment. How much on a monthly basis are you, and what's funny to me is people say, I don't care what the payment is. I just want to know what the rate is. I'm like, well, but those two things like very much related to each other. Right. Because ultimately, and that's the biggest difference that's occurred in the last, 6 to 8 months doing this, is that home prices have not come down. They've continued to go up, and the crash has not occurred, and interest rates have gone up. So payments have gone up a lot. And, having people understand how much the rate impacts it, because, depending on the size of the loan, an eighth of a point on an interest rate, the difference between 6.875 and 7%, other than the fact that one has a 7 in front and one has a 6, is $30. You know what I mean? Like, obviously the loan size depends on that, but that mindset of all we care about is the rate and the price. It's like, well, all of those things factor into what's the most important part, which is your payment, because that's the thing that's going to be with you for the next however many years that you have this loan in this house.
It's the one thing that truly dictates if this is your house or not.
And the other side of it is that people get into a place where, and I try to coach this with my team as well, is to not just give them explain what is a part of the payment and what you can change and what you can't. Because, like, for example, If you're using an FHA loan, mortgage insurance, there's nothing you can do about it. It is what it is. Once you know the size of the loan, you're doing an FHA loan, that's what it is. Property taxes, once you pick the house, it is what it is. You can't change that number. There's homestead exemptions. And, well, we'll just put a homestead. Okay, well, you'll save yourself $50.
Right.
Like, it's not dramatic,
It's
right?
not helping.
And then even insurance, homeowners insurance, maybe $25 or $30 a month. That's about all you can affect on that number. Unless it's a brand new home, right? Then you can get really cheap insurance. But guess what? In 3 years, it's going to be $225 a month.
Right.
So then the only thing that you can really change of any significance sometimes is the principal and interest. Well, rates aren't going to go from 7% to 5% overnight. So if someone gets pre-qualified a week before they're looking, or even a month, there's not going to be a dramatic shift. And like I said, the difference in an eighth of a point is maybe $30, $40, depending on the thing. And then even the down payment, like I coach people all the time about, if I'm you, I don't put down any more money than I absolutely have to. Now, today I might change that a little bit just because rates are so high. But 10 grand right now, if you put down in your house, it's $65 a month. That's it. $10,000 saves you $65. So people think it's like a car. Well, if I just go in and I tweak this and I change that, I can lower my payment $300.
Nope.
You can't. The only way you can do that is to have a lot of cash or buy a different home. And
Right.
that's not an uncomfortable conversation, but it's a difficult conversation, because as a lender, you end up kind of being the bad guy a little bit. And you're just saying, look, I'm not trying to burst your dreams of home ownership. I'm just saying that your expectation has to be in a good place. So that way, when you go shopping for houses, you know what you're looking for.
Right. And we love you for being the bad guy.
Right.
Because then what happens is, like, these people, they were looking at a home that was $450.
Yeah.
Well, when they actually, this is what we are comfortable spending monthly, that was closer to $350, $375. Well, now they've seen the $450. Do you think they are going to be happy at all with a $350? I mean, just miserable experience.
Yes.
For them, and it could have been avoided.
Yes.
And so that's where, since I've been in the business, it's like, make sure they get pre-qualified. It's so much more than that now.
Yeah.
And so we obviously only partner with lenders that will take that time and go through, and give them, all of the information, not just you're pre-approved for $450, because they were pre-approved for $450.
Yeah, they can afford it. I mean, based on our ratios.
Yeah, but they just 100% could not.
Correct.
And so that benefited no one.
Right.
So we kind of went to a required, really. And I mean, now it's just so normal. Like, hey, we want to buy a home this summer. Awesome. The very first thing we do is a buyer consult in our office. And no one has said, like, no, that's weird.
Yeah.
And so we definitely, like, it's a lot driven around the financing, but hopefully that portion has kind of been done for them. And if it hasn't, then I tell that same story of like why this is so important that you understand what you're going to pay for. But last year really kind of gave us the opportunity to explain the market, because what we were finding happening too often was, they hear what's happening on the news or whatever, but we'd go and they would fall in love with this house. And then we would tell them, okay, well, based on, the numbers of this neighborhood, the last 30 days, they're going 10% over. And they're like, what in the heck? No. And we're so unprepared for that. Yes. And we would have to go through, and they're like, no, not this one. So of course, we'd write the offer. However, what is your best offer? Write it. They'd lose it. Criteria. And we'd move on. And it was probably about like house number 5 that they're like, okay, we get it. We've got to offer 10%. Well, guess what? Now it's 15% because you've waited 60 days. I mean, she wrote an offer 22% over and still did not get it.
How have you told her on that? Because we're dealing with that obviously less now, but back then, how did you explain to her about, because I mean, you can't, it's no different than listing, I think, to some extent, because the buyer or the seller in their head has a number that they think it is based off what they're looking at or whatever. And even though you've been doing it for 20 years and you have all the professional knowledge and they hired you for that reason, they still don't want to listen until they actually, it's like they have to fail several times in order for them to hear. So how do you, like, have you found a trick to kind of be able to get over that?
So we showed them case studies, and they were actual homes that we had sold.
Okay.
And so like some of them were listings, like, hey, this was a listing that we had, and we would try to find it in their price point. Like typically when they're coming in, I know kind of what we're looking for,
right?
Because they've been pre-qualified. So like we would have, a listing that we just sold, and we would be, because on a listing, you have all the data from that. We got, 40 offers. We had one in Woodland West, and I use that one as an example for a really long time. It was listed. I guess our strategy on the listings was always to list it at what we thought it would appraise for, right? Which is kind of like always how we've been doing it.
Right.
But then telling the sellers, well, based on right now, you'll probably get 10, 15, whatever those numbers were for that neighborhood. But this house was listed at market value. We had 65 offers. Talk about learning how to do.
I'm a pro at spreadsheets for
Wow.
that.
Yeah, 65. Wow. I finally just told her if it's not
conventional
above
cash,
if it's not over 300, just don't even put it in the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And so we kind of like had to document it for the sellers because we we want to present everything.
Yeah.
But 65, that's where we were like, maybe we need to change the spreadsheet strategy. But we got 65, and I think of those 65, like 5 of them were cash. Over 20% of them were 20% over. And so this is real life house. And I would show them the information on the MLS. This is what we listed it for. This is what it closed for. But then the behind the scenes of we did have 65 on this. And on this other one, different price point, we had 25 offers. And so that is really where we were able to get buy-in much quicker and save them, 4 or 5 homes of tears.
Right.
That really seemed to work because it was real life.
Yeah.
Information from our market that had just happened. And so really I was updating that spreadsheet. We also made a good to great offer, I guess kind of another little worksheet. Here's what everyone else is doing. And then here's how we've been successful in getting offers accepted.
Okay.
And not every single category could they do.
Right.
And a lot of it, explaining if we're offering, because a lot of them were like, oh, we'll offer 20% over. We don't care.
Yeah.
No, you actually have to have that money in your bank.
Yes.
And then they were like, oh, wait a second. I don't have that.
Yes.
So really getting them to understand that portion of it too, what it appraises. There was so much more education involved in these last 2 years because everyone kind of knows what an appraisal is, but we haven't had issues for a long time. And so really kind of educating them on, if we are going to offer this, you have to guarantee that cash.
Right.
And so sometimes that wasn't an option for them, but there are other things we can, double our earnest money, double our option, pay title, do all of these things. And so that was kind of constant. We were listing like crazy. And so we had so much of that information that you can't pull that on MLS.
Right.
And so I was just constantly updating that spreadsheet. Of okay, the 10%, by the time we finally got them to get comfortable with, 10% over, it really had jumped to 15.
Yeah.
And then in some areas, it went, that one, I don't remember what it ended up closing out, but she was 22 over, paid everything, guaranteed it. I think we did an appraisal waiver, the whole thing, and still, didn't get it.
Well, and now it's flipped because now the listing side of things, because you're dealing with the same, it's a symptom of a similar problem, in that now you have sellers that now, granted, I think we're far enough into it now that, everybody has a little bit better realistic expectation, but either way, you still have sellers that are like, well, no, this house is this much. And, the neighborhood is like, they sold 6 months ago. Okay. That's not
well,
6
even
months.
Going back to seller paid, title policy.
Yes.
They're like, because buyers, literally I had never, the checkbox has always been there.
Yeah.
Never checked that box that a buyer's ever paid a title policy until
recent,
late 2020. Or 2021. And so now that check mark is going back on the seller side, and they're like, no, no one's paying that anymore. And I'm like, well, yeah, actually you are now.
Yeah. Well, because they have other options, and there's not, and it's not even, I take that back. There's not a bunch of options. There is lack of buyers out there.
Correct.
So you just have fewer showings and fewer, there's not as many people coming through the house. So the ones that are there, you got to get them while you can. Yeah. Back to the collective living thing a little bit, because I did want to ask you. So what is it? What was it about that particular setup that attracted you to it? When you were looking to make a change, why was that one the thing that you gravitated to? Yeah.
So really control over brand. A couple years ago, it was on Etsy. It was when I had moved to Front. I had a little Erin Bergin logo made on Etsy. It was $25, and I did my signs, and that's
the one in red.
Everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, you have started your own company." I was like, "No, I don't know why they think that." And I have a bunch of 3s. Enneagram. Do you do the Enneagram?
I have no idea what that is.
Okay, that's a whole other podcast.
Wait, hang on.
It's a personality profile.
Oh, okay.
The type thing.
Yes,
and so your 3s are kind of they're achievers.
Okay.
So, and I have a lot of entrepreneur, achiever, people in my life, and they're like, why would you not start your own? Like you should, you've been in it for so long. And again, like I just never wanted that responsibility.
Sure.
I've always like my experience on a team was so fantastic, and any new agent in the business, that's what I tell them is get on a team.
Yes.
I don't care how much you're paying, the camaraderie, just the knowledge, the leads, like all of it, it just makes sense for a new agent.
Yeah. You have to surround yourself with people that know what they're doing in order to get better at the business.
Yeah,
you can't
absolutely.
just be on an island by yourself.
For sure.
Yeah.
And
even once you've been doing it a long time, I think, because there's always constantly changing, and you got to be around people, and you can't just be floating along on your own.
Yes. So it was never really kind of on my radar. I kind of like, I think we maybe talked about this pre-show where, I liked taking my clients from the buyer consultation all the way to being at closing with them.
Yep.
If there's something wrong with the paperwork, like I did that a lot, a long time myself. But then once she came in, like she wasn't having as much interaction with a client. Like I always wanted them to call me.
Right.
When you already have title and lender involved, throwing, another coordinator, so she was very kind of behind the scenes.
Right.
That was just how in my world, me being a buyer or seller, that's how I would want it done.
Right.
And there's a gazillion different ways. One's not better than the other, but that's what I wanted from my clients.
Yeah.
I wanted just a really high level. And so that's why I've always just kind of ruled out brokerage. But having the brand identity, like that's just such a big thing now as far as marketing goes, which has been really fun. Like the social media part of it, like just really embracing that. But wanted just a little bit more control as far as, well, I won't use any brokerage as an example, but
Sure.
You have
banana
real estate.
Right.
And you and I can both be there and market ourselves completely different.
Right.
And so again, like I wanted everything, like, I don't know if elegant's the right word, but just like,
you had a certain style you wanted to present.
And
well, you have to present yourself in a way that you attract that type of client, right?
Correct.
If you want to be a luxury living type agent, then you need to present yourself in a luxury. You can't roll around in Goose t-shirts. Right. That's not how that works. Well, that is one thing I noticed about you when we first met years ago, that you were doing before. Because right now, if you go on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or anything, like it depends on what world you create for yourself, but there's realtors and lenders. Everybody's doing social media.
Right.
Or at least some version of it. And there's a lot of people doing it. Not everybody. More people should. But what I noticed about you was that you were doing that on a pretty regular, consistent basis before it became the thing that everybody needed to do. Not that there weren't, you weren't the first one, but I'm just saying in our area that I saw, especially because you had taken the idea of owning your market specifically with Pantego, and you were doing the community, going to the bakery and going to the shop and talking to and I thought that was brilliant because, when you can endear yourself to a community, whether it be business owners or whether it be people that you interact with on a day-to-day basis, that isn't just, hey, I'm a realtor, hey, I'm a realtor, hey, I'm a realtor all the time. That's how you grow a business. You don't grow a business by constantly, it's like, I'll see the posts online now about call me to buy or sell your home, or I'm here to take your referrals or whatever.
Right.
And it's like, that
have they not taken a single class?
Yes. Like that doesn't work. Yeah. You have to give something of value. And that's something that you did from the very beginning, was giving something of value to the people that you were interacting with. So what was it that put you in a place where you're like, I need to do this? Like what was the trigger for you on that?
Yeah, it was a total accident.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah. Because I think I've just always loved community, and I really do love Pantego, and I love the business owners there. And so really, I think it actually came from, I'm the one that could work technology, because so we had a Pantego Business Alliance, they still meet, and they had these ideas of like doing mini commercials or whatever, but most of them were like, what? And so Zoe actually, I don't even know that you were the one videoing then. We would go and they were so long, Mike. They're painful now. They're like
Yes.
5-minute long
Yes.
YouTubes.
Yes.
But like all the little stores and all the little restaurants. And I was really just like helping them.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of like the host of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
It was just like, okay, here's what I love about their store. But,
Yeah.
you know, show us around. Tell us like what you guys have. And we just recently did 20. Oh God. So we celebrated 20 years, mine 20 years in real estate. And so we did 20 days of giveaways, but we highlighted just all the businesses in Pantego again, or like things that I loved.
Yeah, sure.
And really did that because I want to give back to those.
Yeah.
And not just the companies, but my, you know, following on Instagram, my clients, my friends.
Yeah.
And that had just way more impact than you would ever think it would.
Well, the authenticity of it, and that's the thing these days, especially, and I'm sure your generation is seeing this more and more, is that doing things because you really want to do them, not because you're trying to. It's not a means to an end, right? You're like, no, I actually want to do this. Is really what comes across and gives value to people. Because when you go into that business and you talk to the business owner and you show their place, you're doing that because you want to learn about it. You like going there. You enjoy it. And then all you're doing is adding a layer of, well, if I'm gonna do this anyway, then I'm gonna use this passion that I have, and I want to help. I want to help this business owner, and if that helps me at the same time, then great, right? And there's a reciprocation that happens there. And if you go in, and this is the reason that you've stuck with it, because I think that's where a lot of agents lose sight of things, because they get to a place where, okay, I'm going to do this particular marketing, whatever gimmick they want to run, right? And then when that gimmick doesn't immediately bear fruit, which usually it doesn't, then they quit and they give up on it, and then they move on to something else. And the consistency of something has to be there in order for it to be effective. And if you don't care about it and have a passion for it, then you're not going to be consistent with it. So you have to have that real desire. No, I actually want to talk to this business, and I want to go in here, and I want to meet this business owner, and I want to help them because I like it. It makes me feel good. Not because I think if somebody sees this, they're going to call me to list my house.
Yeah.
Right.
Social media really, both from just like a engagement, but also from listing advertisement perspective, that's a full-time job.
Yes.
And so when we got real busy, especially with listings, I immediately was like, I cannot do this anymore. And so lucky to have someone like close to me, like start that business.
Yeah.
And so she's been with us for several years. I have a lot of
so you have somebody that does.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool.
So I have a lot of the creative ideas. And then of course, like we shoot our own videos, we don't have doubles of ourselves, but but then I send that to her, and she's the one that makes it beautiful.
Yes. That's the hardest part.
Definitely
honestly.
not going to pretend that I can do all the things, because that really is, a big part of real estate is realizing like, what are your strengths, or really any job, like what are your strengths? And it's not that it wasn't, well, she definitely is better at it than me. And I am terrible with words.
Oh, we're not
I
good
can
at
say them.
captions.
Yeah. Neither one of us. I pass that gene along. Captions, we'll shoot the video. We'll talk forever. Like we can definitely do that part. What do we say in what words do we put on this? No clue.
Yes.
And so Rachel that is her gift.
Yes.
And she knows us well. And so, cause that's the other thing, there's a lot of companies out there that will do that for you. And then you're like, I don't think that's that person. No. And not that I want everyone to like, oh, this is all me by any means, but it does need to reflect you.
Well, you have an idea of what you're trying to do and what the message you're trying to bring across. And if you give it off to somebody who you don't know and they don't know you, it's not that they, I've experienced that myself, because doing this podcast, I started like my very first one. I think I was sitting in that room over there, and I was sitting on a stool with like a roofer, my buddy Cody. And I was like, hey, will you do this thing with me? And he's like, yeah, sure, man, whatever, So we're sitting there, and it's like really not awkward, but it was, I kind of knew what I wanted to do. We were just talking. It was fine. Cause I can talk a lot, but there was nothing polished about it whatsoever. Right. But it was one of those things like, well, I just got to start, because I'm not when it comes to social media, you're not going to see me like pointing at stuff as it rolls down and like doing it. That's just not my style. Right. But I can talk, and I can have a conversation with somebody, and we can talk about, really important things. I'm terrible at the networking stuff. Like if you ever see me at like a networking meeting, I'm probably just found one person. I'm talking to that one person, because I can't talk about the weather and whatever. It drives me crazy. But my point is that I found this avenue of doing this thing, and I don't get wrapped up in how many people see it or, what the downloads are or whatever. I mean, it's getting better, but I don't, it's not something I care about that much. But what it is I will consistently do it because I like to do it and I enjoy to do it. The hard part though, is that I have hours of content. And there is so much that I can do with it to cut it up and put it into micro content and all that stuff. But man, that takes a lot of time. And just even I've gotten better lately at, like, when we'll finish up here, I'll go home and I'll put this in a couple places, and then I'll go through and I'll watch it again. And then I'll go and I'll take little clips that I think, okay, we talked about this topic here, and I'll put it there, talk about this. So I've got 3 or 4 minute clips, which I can do that, but then it's the front side of the edit, the back side of the edit, the captions, the zooms and the cuts and all that kind of stuff, which gets really, really tough. And when you're trying to do mortgages too, or sell real estate, and
this is not our job.
No, you have to find people.
And then it's changing every day. And that was really where I found huge value in piecing that part out was, the algorithms. I mean, like you even said, 1 o'clock's a great time for this. That could change next
Changes
week.
all the time.
I cannot spend my time making sure I'm keeping up with that. And so, especially for our listings, like we get a lot of views, a lot of people come to our open houses and things because they've seen it on, Facebook, Instagram. Well, I really don't even know. I mean, at one time events were doing really good. But then Rach was telling me last week that has changed and now it's something else. And
it changes.
I don't have time for that. And so, definitely huge value in our business when we added her.
So Zoe, because you're younger, and I'm sure not because I don't mean this in like you spend all your time on social media, but I'm just saying. Okay, all right, well, fair enough. But that is, I mean, look, we've grown up here, right? I had a conversation with somebody last week. She's from Tennessee, and she's 25 years old, and she's a Gen Z guru or whatever, or has positioned herself that way. And you guys have been raised with social media, and you've been raised with phones, and you've been raised in this world that we were not a part of at all when we grew up. So even though we've adapted, right? In what year were you born? Not to
81.
Okay, I'm a little older than you. I'm 78. So, but we were born in a time where there were no phones, there were no, internet. There was none of that stuff. We were out, till the sun or till the lights came on or whatever. But you guys have been under this surveillance world essentially, because we can watch every move everywhere you go all the time. So you're just used to it. Like, this is just what you have. So what do you think, like from your generation, when you look at the importance of social media and being involved with that, and just, I mean, y'all are the first couple ones when I do my things that actually shared, the stories and stuff, because people that I bring on, they just don't think about it, because it's like, but if you want to get traction on this stuff, that's the thing you got to do. So what have you tried to convince?
I didn't know how people knew about this.
Yes.
Somebody texted me yesterday. I was like, it's because she shared it.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I think that's where a lot of like my business comes from, is because people my age, my friends, see everything I post on Instagram and social media and things like that, because that's what they want to see. Like, even a new food place or a boutique, like I won't go to the internet and look it up. I'm going to go on their Instagram and look at their pictures.
And if they don't have an Instagram, then
don't go there.
Well, and that's crazy, because we, like, I think even your generation doesn't even use, do y'all even use Yelp at all? Like, is that a thing?
If I need to do a bad review, I will.
Like, if you're just mad, you're just like,
oh my gosh.
It's true. I'll download it, do my bad review,
and then kick it off, right? Because that was something that Allie that I had last week said. She said that if they're looking for a place to go eat or whatever, that they go to TikTok or Instagram to see if they can find. And I never even, like, that's never even crossed my mind.
How do you even do
TikTok
that?
for sure. They'll post all the new food places, like everything. We don't use TikTok that much.
Well, and that's another thing.
It's going to go away.
Well, I don't know. I don't think so. I know the whole China thing or whatever, but Google gets way more information on you than TikTok does.
For sure.
Okay. And they're involved in everything. The difference is, in that situation, is Google is a US company and TikTok is a Chinese based company, and they are taking Google's money. And so Google's mad about that. And so they are trying to get them out. Not that it's good or bad. I'm just saying that that's the circumstance, but
no, you can go down rabbit holes with all of that. And that's really why we kind of, and she may, I don't know. Are you on TikTok?
Well, that's what I say.
I mean,
TikTok,
on TikTok,
they use TikTok. They don't go to Google.
Right.
They use TikTok.
Yeah.
Do you
right?
put your real estate stuff on there?
Every once in a while.
Oh.
I'm mainly Instagram, but I'll try and do TikTok.
But I'm just saying when they're looking for something,
No.
right?
Yeah.
If you're
Yeah.
looking for a topic or you want to know about, if you were trying to buy a house and you wanted to know about, what do I need to know about a real estate transaction? They're going to go to TikTok.
For sure.
Yeah, I
more than they're
needed
gonna
new
Google.
pots and pans on TikTok the other day. I said best pots and pans from Amazon. Ordered it.
I mean,
Well, then you need to be putting more stuff on there.
That's true.
That's the
I just, for my sake, it's like you got to pick at.
yes. You can't be.
You
everything
cannot
to
be
all
all
things.
things
No,
to
no,
yeah.
no.
So
And that's
I
where
will not be on
Instagram's
TikTok.
been your lane,
Yes.
and I think you've done a great job with
Thank
that
you.
on growing that. And that's where I think it's important, and I'd like you to speak to that on agents trying to do all things to everybody, and you need to be focused, whether it be buyer's agent, listers. I mean, there's a little bit of balance there, but if you're trying to be everything DFW or you're trying to be everything, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. So why do you think it's so important that you have to focus on one area and get really good at that?
Yeah. So years ago, it was kind of described as like a SEAL team, right? Where I
like
am
that.
hyper focused
I like that.
on Pantego, the ON3. Of
Uh-huh.
course, now like we're listing one in Burleson this week,
Yeah.
and we'll go other areas, but like we were just talking about Frisco. I have partnered with an awesome agent. She's fantastic at Frisco, McKinney, like all that area. A, it's a really far drive for me.
Yes.
B, it is changing so much that competency
It's
just not there. Like
Yep.
in Arlington, if you tell me where you want your kids to go to school, I know exactly what neighborhoods.
Yes.
And they get funky in Arlington.
Yeah.
They're not right.
Yeah.
I mean, people have bought in Wimbledon thinking that their kids are going to go to Martin, and they're on the wrong side of the Wimbledon, and they're going to Mansfield, and that's a real mess. So a Frisco agent isn't going to have any clue.
Right.
And in fact, that particular listing I think was incorrect on MLS, but you know what? When the deal is done, it doesn't matter what MLS says.
Yeah.
So I think obviously being fully engaged in real estate, we still have a huge percentage of agents that are part-time. And I for someone who's getting in the business, I just always discourage them from even thinking that that's possible.
Right.
The last year, well, Zoe just had one this week where it was listed at like 11 o'clock in the afternoon and it said offers due at 10 p.m. Well, if you're working a full-time job, you're probably not even going to be able to show that house until 5 or 6. How are you going to get an offer in?
Right.
You probably haven't written one in a while, so it's going to take you even longer, right? Like you're just out of practice of all of that. And
so whoever wrote that doesn't have a real good understanding of how.
Right. But it's just hard. I think this business looks really fun, right? You've got Selling Sunset and Joanna Gaines and, just all these fun people, but this business really is not about showing homes.
No.
Everyone's like,
That's what we make it look like.
I just love homes. And I'm like, yeah, me too. But it's just so much more than that. And that's one thing that we were talking about at lunch is just when she was saying like she went to school or, you go through your courses.
Yeah.
Well,
that's nothing.
It teaches you absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to find the client, and for her, like there's been some discouragement there because she is young. I mean, I was young.
Everybody has to start somewhere. I mean,
Terry was like, you need to go to the Gap and look older.
Yes.
And so I did. I tried to like look older, because as much knowledge, like people still have to trust you.
Yeah.
But I was like, sister, you are learning this. Just being in homes, showing the amount of homes that she shows is probably more than, 10 part-time agents in a year.
Yeah.
And again, like with people not previewing, so she's in the property, she's seeing the pricing. I make her do her own CMAs. She's learning all of that. And then, I mean, all her friends are graduating. They're all getting their, big girl, big boy jobs.
Yes.
And then she's going to be the one that is
they're going to
ready.
get to her for
Yeah.
And
so it's just kind of being patient with that.
Yeah. I think that's where it's harder when you're younger because you get the old folk. Oh, I've been doing this. I know more than you've ever forgotten. That whole
she already
thing happens.
knows that she knows more than most. I mean,
yes.
She's come up against some oldies but goodies and just technology, like you got to keep moving along and learning this stuff. And
well, and you're going to position yourself in a good spot because your generation are buying homes and I had something the other day I read, it was like the pace at which, now granted it's changed because the market has changed so much, but up until the last 8 months or whatever, Gen Z had purchased more homes as a percentage of a generation than even Gen X, like we're a part of. So, or I guess, are you a millennial technically?
Like I'm like on the border.
Fairly,
so I say no.
but it's the percentage of Gen Z that are purchasing and buying homes is greater than it was for Gen X, generation come through. So now granted that at the time rates were low and there was a lot more inventory and all that kind of stuff, but it's a desire. And I get frustrated. I don't know if you ever see these things because I have a conspiracy brain if you haven't watched any of my stuff that I do, but I get frustrated with the news media because they make it sound like millennials and Gen Z, they don't want to own homes. They want to live in apartments and condos and they want to be communal and all this other stuff. And I'm like, that's true for any young person before you have kids. Right. When you don't have kids, and now granted, the generations are having kids later, so that's part of it. But if you don't have children, then yeah, you want to go party and hang out with your friends because that's your world. But the moment the kids show up, you want to get away from all that stuff.
Right.
And you want to have your own place and you want to have your own spot. And you don't want Billy banging on your door, or, on your wall next to you, telling you wants to come over and have a few drinks. Like that's not what they want. But this idea gets perpetuated out there, but it's going against it because your generation is buying homes because they're like, no, I want to have my own place.
Yeah. So something that she's constantly saying too is like, I'm just throwing away money every month.
Yeah.
And so I think they are a little bit more budget like minded and
they went through
they also want to
recession.
retire younger than we have all been retiring and really enjoy life.
Yeah.
And so they see home ownership as a path to doing all of that quicker.
Yeah.
She is closing on her first house
tomorrow. All right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Heck yeah. Friend, or was it, where'd you get, is it a listing or a buy or what? How'd you get it?
No. Her own house.
Oh, your house.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's really exciting then. Okay.
We share a fence now.
Very nice. Oh, okay.
She's going to live behind
next
me.
door. Okay. Well, hey, no.
You want to have some drinks?
She's going to be knocking on the fence, right?
I'm getting a gate put in.
Well, hey, you got to, look, we're close enough, but we can have our own space. And we don't need to be on top of each other. I think that's awesome. I hope, and so does my wife. She hopes our daughter wants to do that one day as well. I don't know if she will, but I think she's going to run far away. But so real quick, because we're almost an hour into this thing. It goes by fast, right? I do want to get your thoughts on the housing market in general. Okay, so we've gone through, like we talked about earlier, all these iterations of, home prices up and down, rates up and down. But one of the things that has not occurred that everybody was talking about forever was that this crash was going to happen and all these prices were going to come down. And if you just wait, it'll get better. And it hasn't. And in Texas, actually, the peak of home prices were in June of 2022. And we are up almost not quite 1%, but we're up almost 1% now. With rates at 7 and 8% from last year. Mm-hmm. So they've done nothing but go up. Now they haven't gone up at the same clip, thank goodness, but they're still going up. And so, and I don't see any builds coming on the horizon. I don't see the inventory showing up unless there is just massive job losses and foreclosures that happen, which there's no indication of that yet. Anything can happen. But what do you think? Where's the market going? What is it going to look like when, Zoe's ready to buy her next house, or when my 15-year-old is ready to buy? Like, where are we going to be?
Yeah. So wouldn't we all love the answer?
Yes.
But so obviously rates are playing into our slower market right now, but it's so funny. Any listing appointment I go to, a lot of older people recently, they're like, well, when we bought our first house, it was 18%. And so I think the media is playing such a big role in these sideline buyers.
Yes.
They are terrified by what is being said. So that's why I've been putting out to all of our clients and on social media, like, if it's in your thoughts that you might want to buy, let's do a buyer consultation. Yeah. I mean, obviously we don't charge anything for it. We just want to educate you. And so then we can kind of take some of those lies and help, explain like what they're actually meaning when they say that, and get them with a lender who can, maybe it's not waiting till it comes down to 5%. Maybe they can afford it at 6%, and seeing what that number looks like. I also really, as far as like affordable housing, I also just think that we're just like over consuming. Yes. Our home's expensive.
Well,
I bought my first home at $160,000, but I was also making like half of what.
Well, when you say the older person that says that the rates were 18%, that's right, they were. Mm-hmm. But that house that they bought for 18% was $60,000. Right. And back in 1955, and this is something I get off on all the time, is if I had my family, there was 4 of us, me, my wife, my 2 kids, I could work a solo job by myself. My wife could stay home with my children and help them, because that's part of issue with society, I think, as a whole, is that we have a lot of
We're all working.
parents, and nobody's raising their kids because they have to work, because you have to.
Right.
You don't have a choice.
Right.
Because back then I could have my job, I could have a pension, I could have insurance, I could have all the stuff that I needed, and my wife could stay home and take care of our kids, and my kids could I could pay for their college, I could buy them cars, I could do all that stuff on my one single income, because it was affordable. And nowadays it's not.
But were you eating out every meal?
No, you weren't. But the food budget is much, that's a small part of it, because
I don't know about that.
Well, so I read something, this was last year. So they did a study from 1995 to 2015. So it was 20 years. Okay. And the average price it was homes, cars, education. And there was one other thing. But the average price of a house had gone up 350%. And there's no inflation. They just said, if you just take inflation completely out of it, the average cost of education had gone up like 500%. The average cost of a car had gone up like 280% or something like that. But income on average had gone up less than 100% over that period of time. So people's incomes it's an imbalance. Everything's getting more expensive, which is why, we have more debt. People have more credit card debt and debt right now than we've had at any point in history, because we're still living the same life that we were living when money was flowing heavily. And now it's starting to contract and everything's much more expensive. And instead of slowing down your lifestyle, we're still spending, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, again, it's good, bad, whatever, it's just what it is.
Right. And
it's unfortunate because the cost of homes have gotten so prohibitive for a lot of people, because the starter home, like you said, I bought my house, was $130,000. And this was in 2004 in offshore Wood in Arlington, right there by the lake, nice neighborhood. It was 1,400 square feet, perfect little house for my family. It was awesome. There's no way you're not finding that today.
Yeah. Well, and the ones that are, like, we're going to list a home in Burleson for 250, 255. It'll get snagged by an investor.
Yeah.
And my sellers are really actually being conscious of, like, hey, we'd love to actually sell this to a family. Yeah. And so that'll be something. If they want to know that, the seller name is on the contract.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't always mean that family won't then turn around and rent it, but
money's money. You know what I mean?
But we can definitely, cash, whatever, LLC. Yes. This is an investor that's going to rent this property. Yeah. And that, I think, is playing a huge role into our issue, especially for the first time home buyer.
The Dallas Morning News did an article about 3 months ago, maybe. Yep. And I actually, Amy was on here. We talked about this a little bit, and I don't know, where they get these numbers and how accurate it is, but it was like, they said that 50% of the homes in Tarrant County were sold to entities and not individuals in 2022.
Yeah. That's even insane. Something like on a very small scale in Pantego. Like, I'm just trying to educate, because we're an older community. Yeah. And these people built these homes and they are still living in them.
Yes.
And so in fact, the home that she's buying, the owner passed away in December. A lot of families, these kids are like, oh, we'll just dump it off to, whoever will just give us quick cash. Well, they don't understand what that means for that neighborhood. Yes. And these people, these kids did grow up in the neighborhood. So not that I have to list it, although I'd love to.
But that's why it's so imperative.
What you were saying, on the market.
You got to buy a house, like, regardless of the price, you have to figure out how to get a home. Like, really and truly. Yeah. Would you agree?
Of the ones in Pantego that sold this year that were under like 325, half of them, as soon as the first sale sign came out, a for rent sign came in. I was just crushed by it. Yes. Because, it changes the neighborhood too.
But that's why we have to educate people on the importance of why, when they say, you'll know the answer to this, you may not know. When's the best time to buy a house, Erin? Today, yesterday, anytime right now, because you can't control where rates are going to go. You can't control where prices are going to go, which, if you look at the chart for homes, it's just like this. It doesn't, there's a little bit of this, but it's always on the way up. Yeah. And it's our job in this industry doing things like this to help people understand, like, I know it's expensive. I know that it's, rent is less, but we're moving in a direction that home ownership is going to be so prime for individuals, especially if you want to grow wealth. Because when I bought my first house on Shorewood, I bought it right before the crash. I bought it in 2004 and I sold it in 2009. Like, worst time to possibly sell the house, right? I bought it for 130. I sold it for 135. In the worst market that there possibly was, I sold it for 5,000 more than I bought it. Then the next house I bought, which was in Mansfield, I bought for 190,000. We did put a pool in, but 5 years later, we sold it for over $300,000, right? So you can't there is no other avenue right now, unless you're gambling in the stock market and things, that you can put money in a place and get the value and return on your money over a longer period of time than real estate. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Well, and being from Southern California and seeing like what happened there in the early 2000s. In fact, my two best friends from elementary school both live in DFW now because we're so affordable.
Yes.
And so then it's kind of hard to say like, oh,
yeah, other places
I
it's
get
way
it.
worse.
If we're comparing to the other parts of the country, like we are very affordable. And like even just talking to her about it the last couple of years, it's make changes in your life.
Yes.
Now because she is buying a home, she's put it out there. We've been sharing stories on the inspection, and of course, the worst inspection I've had in like years and years and years. Never had asbestos on an inspection.
Of course.
Didn't appraise, like all the issues.
Yes.
But so her friends are like, well, wait a second. I want to buy a house.
Yeah.
But they also want to eat every meal out.
Yes.
And so it's making sacrifice. We don't really live in a world of sacrifice right now. And so I think it's still
Everybody wants everything.
possible. Yeah. I don't know if we have time. Do we have time
No,
for my quick little? So Embrace Grace is a ministry I've been involved in for several years, and that's a ministry for single women experiencing an unplanned pregnancy.
Okay.
But then we also kind of take that to like once they've had their babies, like single and parenting. And so I think we've been doing this for about 7 years now. So like our youngest baby, like when mom was pregnant, is now 7. In fact, it was our very first mom that came to the group. She is a teacher, single mom, no child support. And so many of them have the goal of home ownership, which is so cool. Cause I mean, when I was single mom and, young and I was not thinking about buying a house. I'm thinking about surviving the day.
Yes. You're trying to get through.
And so after years and years of kind of mentoring these women, like this past semester, we just talked about like big dreams, like life dreams. And, home ownership was one of them or one of the goals for a lot of the women. And, but then they were very quickly defeated by like, well, I'm never going to be able to have 20% down. I'm like, we need to buy our console. You do not need 20% out. I'm just never going to be able to do it. Well, that very first mom, Jalecia is her name. She purchased a home, single mom, all those things, like no partner, no child support, teacher. Now she is in the reserve. So I know that there's like some financial compensation there, but,
there's not much.
But she straight told these other girls, like, I was ready to, mom up and where can we cut and all of those things. And she's like, I don't get Starbucks. I have a used car that she's paid off. Like she doesn't have a car payment and all of these. And she bought a $325,000 house. Yeah. Well, so it's possible.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that your generation actually, I think, because when the old folks talk about these kids these days, I'm like, you know what? The kids these days have a better grasp on their finances than I was never taught this as a kid. My parents didn't teach me this stuff. And I think you guys, because you went through that crash where you saw, the parents struggling and people, you're like, I'm not going to get myself into that situation. Like I'm going to do everything I can to save and not spend. I mean, granted, there's always, extremes on both sides of people that do, but I think as a whole, the Gen Z generation is becoming more and more fiscally responsible because they've seen what it leads to if you're not.
Yeah.
And I think that that's great. And it's going to give more opportunities for you guys to be able to buy homes and have more available to you so you can actually grow and build wealth over your life as opposed to spending every nickel you have and living paycheck to paycheck and being in debt because you just can never get out of that hole. But if you don't have somebody showing you how to do that, then it's a very difficult thing to do. And I think that ministry that you're running is fantastic because that's the biggest gap between the haves and the have-nots is just the education of how to get there. Because if you can show people how to get there, anybody can do it. You just have to know how, and you got to know the path.
Yeah.
So
you're a hoarder of money. What made you that way?
I like seeing it in my bank account.
Well, that's good. That's good.
I also love to spend my money, but I know
you've saved a lot of money.
Just on things that you feel important, right? It's putting the importance on the things that you
think
find.
a lot of those things are not important.
No, yeah for sure.
Well, I mean,
we all like the new shoes. We want to go to the fancy new restaurants.
Yes.
TikTok makes us spend too much.
Yeah. It does. Mm-hmm. Well, ladies, I really appreciate y'all coming in and sitting down and chat with me for a little bit. It's always fun to, hear the stories that you have about people and their experiences, especially in our local market here. So I do appreciate your time. Is there anything before we go that you just want to say or leave with, or, anything that we didn't talk about that you want to discuss? Anything you want to leave people with?
I think we kind of, I mean, well, yeah. So I think one of the questions I get a lot, in fact, people have been sending me message on Instagram is like, you know, you're so successful. Zoe's doing so great and all these things. And there are a lot of tears behind the scenes. I mean,
we make it look great.
I think we do. I think we need some more behind the scenes bloopers, which she does actually do a pretty good job of posting when I make a mistake. She loves to, you know, both my kids love to post those.
Well, like I said, we're the dumb people.
But we are still human. We make a lot of mistakes. We're just trying to learn and grow. And
well, no success is ever accomplished without a bunch of mistakes. Like you said earlier, every slide in your buyer's presentation is a mistake that was made.
Yeah.
And nobody's perfect, and nobody is ever going to be perfect. All you can do is keep trying your best and learning, and then sharing what you know, to help people out, everybody else. Because otherwise, what are we here for, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, all right,
thank
ladies.
you.
Well, thank you so much. I
yes,
appreciate
you.
y'all coming in, and we'll see you guys next week. Adios. All right, there we go. Goes by fast.